Okay, there are about 9 students at the moment. So we shall start. The people who are coming late can also join. Um, so good afternoon. My name is Gan and I will be the lecturer for this particular course. And we will be conducting lectures every Sunday from 2 to 4:30. There are 12 weeks. So today is the first week in computation models in financial engineering. So today we are going to discuss about some tools. So this is not exactly going to be about modeling. Today's one is about giving you some introduction to Python. The reason is in this computational modeling, these things need to be written in programs. There are certain amount of calculations. So doing it manually by hand or by the calculator is hard. So you need to have a computer to do it. And there are various things you can do for it. Earlier, we used to do it in MATLAB and then to Octave. But from this year onward, we had decided to move into Python. So today's lecture will be mainly about Python and how we can use it. So this will be more or less like an interactive session, or it's like a lecture where I am just telling you how to take down the notes or anything. This will be an interactive one. So I will give you exercise, so you have to do it. You can ask me questions, I will clarify it, that kind of scenario. So first step, how many of you had done Python early? I think you might have covered it somewhere early. Have you done Python in any of your previous courses? කරලා තියෙනවද Python මීට කලින්? Come on, you can answer. It need to be interactive because I can't see your face, so I can't come to your place and ask. So how to be interactive? Have you done Python early? මීට කලින් Python කරලා තියෙනවද?
No, sir.
නැහැ සර් self study කරලා තියෙනවා හැබැයි just the basics වගේ තමයි ඒ අරින් ලොකුවටම කරලා නැහැ.
Right, okay. මේ පාරත් අපි ලොකුවටම වගේ කරන්නේ නැහැ. අපි basics ටික තමයි කරන්නේ. But I know the usual ways after doing the exam or end of the course, you usually forget everything. So we'll try to do it as a quick recap. Okay. So first step, here's what we are going to cover today. What is Python? And under the Python, there are several different things like data types and variables and data storage mechanisms. And the variables include list, tuples, and things like that. Then about the control flow, like conditionals, conditional branching, and the loop structures. Right. So what is Python? Now, if you say Python to a normal person, he will think about a snake. Python is usually a big snake, but in people who are doing the computer science will first think about a particular computer language, right? So it's a programming language. By the way, I will be recording this one and will upload it to the YouTube. You already have the link to the playlist. So instead of uploading it separately into a separate video every week, I will upload it to the playlist. So from there, you can go to any of the videos, okay? So Python is a programming language. So what is a programming language and why do we need it? Any idea? Okay, we'll ask from someone then. Lahiru, are you there? Lahiru, you know there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is a programming language? Why do you need it? You don't have to be correct, just say some answer.
If we need to build some equation or something via the program, then we need the language, special language called machine language.
Okay, I have to stop sharing because that slide had answer. Who else we can have? We have Lakshmi. What about you? What do you think? What is a programming language and why do you need it?
I think it is useful to program anything in using in computer like that.
Okay, okay, good, good. Next question for, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, Hiruni, what type of programming languages or the names of programming languages do you know? Not the language itself, some names of the programming languages. Don't say Python. Now Python is already there. Anything else you know?
R.
R. Okay, statistical people. Anything else?
SQL queries.
SQL to a certain extent, yes.
And that's all I know, sir.
Okay, Lakmal, what about you? Any other languages?
C++, and Java.
Okay, now okay, great, great. Right, now let's start sharing back again. Okay, now we are going to use a computer. Unfortunately, unless you give some instruction to the computer, it doesn't know what to do. For end users, we usually put all this instruction into a easy to use package where you have the icons, mouse pointers, buttons, menus, things like that. But behind it, there are some fixed set of instructions. So these instructions are written using a programming language. So you can think of programming language as a way to give instruction for computers. So the most of the all of the languages you mentioned, most of them are programming languages. Now you can see there are two different types I could actually see. There are certain types of languages like C++, Java, C#, Fortran, like that. They are a little bit hard to write, hard to code, but they are very powerful because you can control every aspect of the computer to the very nitty-gritty details you can control. So these kind of languages are known as low-level languages. It's easy for computer to understand and to control, but hard for a programmer to do. Hard in the sense you have to write a lot. In the other extreme, you have what is known as a high-level languages. Now SQL belongs to that level. Now there are different generations as well. We'll not go into that detail because that's not part of us. However, things like Python and SQL, as you mentioned, and Lisp, those things are known as high-level languages. So it's easy to write and it's easy for us to understand. Certain languages are very hard, but not very hard, harder, right? Still not hard, harder, right? But other languages are easy to understand. Now Python belongs to the high level category. That's why we are starting with Python. That's why most people who are starting for the programming likes to start with Python. So if you are new to programming, you can start with Python but my personal recommendation is to go with something a little bit low level. Right, next question. Have you heard the word interpreter based and compiler based? Anyone know the difference between interpreting language and a compiler based language?
So can't remember the exact thing, but compile and interpret, I think from one of that is transferring it one line by line, and other one is transferring all things in one bulk.
Yes, mostly correct. So what's happened is in a compiling based language, let's say C++ or C# or Java or something like that, you will write the program once, hello world or whatever the things once, and then you have to do a special process known as the compiling. So what happened is, although we write it in a computer language, computer can't still understand that amount. So it has to be converted to binary. So that conversion is known as the compile. We write the program, then you compile it, and then you write that, then you run that program. We call it an execution of the program. Interpreter-based languages are much more interactive, right? It doesn't have a compiling. What happens is it is translated to another language which can be run by an intermediate layer. So there's no something as compiling. You just run it on a little bit of higher level of abstraction. So it's more interactive. You can you can write a single line and run it and see what's going to happen. Then you can write another line and see what's going to happen. So things like MATLAB and Python are like that. So it's more or less like a dialogue, interactive. While compiler-based languages, you write the whole program, compile it once, and you have that exe, executable file. For the Windows, you have the exe file, and that is the compiled one. Then you run it. So when you have the exe, you can't see the source code. It's just the binary. But if you take a Python program, you can just copy paste into the Python interpreter and run it. So that's the other difference. So Python is an interpreter based one, and it has support for the many different programming paradigms, right? There are different ways to write programs, right? The earliest ones, like when you started with assembly, were called a spaghetti model. You have to jump everywhere and like that. Then you have structured, you have functional programming, which is more or less related to mathematics. And the most popular one will be the object-oriented programming. Those are basically for not the modeling, but commercial programming software. So Python support these kind of different programming aspects. So let's look at some pros and cons. So as I mentioned, it is very easy to learn because it's a high level language. It is easy to learn and it's easy to read. It also has many libraries. So what do you mean by library? What do you think a library is? Anyone?
Is written program or subroutines. You can use repeated.
Yes. Now, certain things we have to do, we and other people have to repeatedly do, right? Then rather than doing the same code again and again, we can put it to something called a library and put it in a one place. Then whenever we want to do that task, we can just call that library and get that thing done, right? So library means there are, so usually it's put in a public domain where people can download it. So most common tasks are available in libraries. Now Python has many libraries. For example, if you want to draw a graph, you can get a library to draw the graph, right? So you don't have to write the code from the beginning, right? So it's very important to have many libraries. It's also free and open source. Now, when it comes to languages, there's not such thing as free and open source because it's a syntax. But when it comes to compilers, obviously it has certain limitations like compilers and IDE and things like that. But for the Python, it is everything is free and open source. However, there are some bad things as well. It is slow as in really slow, right? You may not notice it, but if you run the same thing with let's say C or C++ and the same thing with Python will be about 10 or 20 times slower. So it's very bad if you want to do something fast. And it's also very bad in multi-threading scenario. Actually, Python can't do multi-threading. So you might heard of this word multi-threading. When you have multiple processors and threads, you should be able to run them in parallelly. Python sort of simulate it, but not properly. So performance-wise, Python is very bad. But if you want to learn something or test something, it is a pretty good choice. Right. So what do we need to write a Python program? We need a place to write the program. You can use any kind of editor, even Notepad you can do. But the preferred method is an IDE, Integrated Development Environment. So what is an IDE? What does it include? Any idea? Let's ask from Sachini. Okay. What is an IDE? Do you know anything about IDEs?
So there we can type a program, and I think they are offering some features which can easily type our things and check the errors and all when we are typing.
Exactly, that's right. In a notepad, you can just type it, but it doesn't support special support for programming, right? So if you think about MS Word, right, you can type English in either MS Word or Notepad. In the Notepad, you are just typing, but in the MS Word, you will notice it highlights grammar errors. It highlights syntax, maybe spelling mistakes, autocorrect certain things. So there are so many things. So IDE is something like that. When you're writing something, it helps you to write the code. For example, when you put the dot, it will automatically make some suggestions. If you make some syntax errors, it will highlight it immediately. And most of them allow you to run it at the same IDE. There are find and replace, import in libraries, and all these things are there. So it's good to have a IDE. Now there are many free and proprietary IDEs for the Python. The one we will be using will be called the Jupyter, spelled differently but pronounced as Jupyter. Okay, because the Jupyter words stand for different languages it supports. Okay, and you can have something like PyCharm, and even Visual Studio free version, Visual Studio Code has the support for the Python. So we will be using Jupyter for this one, and of course you need the Python environment, right? So the Windows doesn't come with Python installed, so we have to install the Python. There are different ways you can do this thing. You can install them separately, or you can do something like install the Anaconda. Now it's again another snake, but it's a different name for a software package. Anaconda comes with all the relevant editors, languages, statistical package, and everything. So if you want to run it on your own computer, you can install something like this. Or now this time we are going to use something different. We are going to use Google Colab. Have you heard the word Google Colab? Have you used it? From the silence, I believe you have not used it. Right. However, I believe everyone has a Google account, a Gmail address or something, right? හැමෝටම තියෙනවා Gmail address එකක් ඔය එක. මොකද Google account එකෙන් තමයි log වෙන්න වෙන්නේ. Do everyone has a Gmail address? Okay, then I am assuming you everyone has it. So let me show you how to log into the Google Colab environment. There are two different ways. Either you can start from your Google Drive and create a new file, but usually it only shows the most recently used applications. So for you, it may not pop up, so in that case, we have a little bit of search and find the Colab. Okay, here's how we are going to do it. So search for the word Google Colab and something will pop up like this. You click it and then you will come to a place like this. Right. So that is one way to do it. You can go to Google Drive and start create new notebook, or I'm going to use the other way around. I have a folder already labeled under MSC. I can right click this one under the more. I have this one. Right. So can everyone start their browser and come to this Google Colab website? There you will again see something like this one. In fact, this is a Jupyter notebook running in Google servers. So can you create this? Can you come up to this point? If you have any issues, please let me know. When you finished, give a thumbs up or a OK in the chat so I know you have completed that step so we can move forward. Okay, one person finished.
So excuse me.
Yes.
We have to go click on that new notebook, right? In the
Yes.
Google Core.
Yes, new notebook. Do you want me to try it again? You go to here, Google Drive, new, more, Google Core Laboratory. But since you are doing it for the first time, this may not appear in the shortcut menu. In that case, you have to search for the Google Colab. And here you can say new notebook. And you will see the same scenario. Loading. And you will have something like this. Now I will close this one because it allows only limited number of open notebooks in the free version. I will try to, I think only about 5 notebooks at time. We'll close it and keep only this one. Okay, 2 people, good. Were you able to do it? Nivanta, Sachini, Sandali. Okay, we have, I think we have everyone today attending this one, 14, okay, including me, that's 14. What about you? Have you finished it? Have you came up to this point?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Can you repeat once again how to monitor this? Because I have lost signal over here. So,
Okay, you go to Google and search for Google Colabs, right? Then you click on this one. By the way, you might have to already log into your Gmail account because now I am logging it as my personal Google account. Okay, so first log into Gmail or YouTube or whatever related to Google account, and here you can create new notebook. Once you click that new notebook, you will see a page like this. Now you can see I'm already logged in. So if you are not logged in, maybe you will be prompted to log in with your Gmail account.
okay, so thank you very much.
So this is the place we are going to write our code. So from today onward, this will be your home, right? This is the place where we are going to write everything. So let's get to know about what we have in here, right? So as I mentioned, Python is a programming language. That means that is a place where we are going to give instruction for the computer. Now in this case, this instruction will be run or executed on Google servers. If you install it Python on your home, it will be run on your local machine. In certain cases, running it in the Google server can be a little bit faster, right? So as you can see, we have the usual file menu and some syntaxes here, some buttons here. Here you can rename your file, right? So let's say hello world, that is the usual name we give to the first program. Now I have already created a hello world program, so I'm just going to say hello. And the file extension is slightly different. It's not the Python file extension. It's IPYNB. So that means it's a notebook file, right? So don't worry about that. Just keep the file extension like that and rename your notebook to whatever you like, right? Then you can comment on it, share with it. All these things are there. So if you have some issues with your code, you can click the share button. And then you can get a link, right? You can get the link and paste it to the chat. So I can come and check your code. So that's again possible. You have the file menu where you can do the open, save, download, and all this usual stuff. Edit menu, file, all are common. Here you have the another important one, runtime. So here you can run the program through the menu, or there are some keyboard shortcuts as well. So I will teach you about the keyboard shortcuts also. In addition, there's something called change runtime type. So later on, we will work on a little bit computationally intensive tasks. In that case, you can add extra support like GPU or TPU, which will make your program run faster, right? But for the time being, we don't need it, so we'll keep it as none. This side, you have another side panel where you can have, for example, different options. For example, if you want, we can have file structures. There are some code samples, and all these things are there. And you can even load the Google Drive in here, right? All these things are there. And here you will see two buttons called code and text. So this allows us to write the code, and between the line, if we want, we can add some text. Not the usual comments, some text with some more details. Now, comments are basically only the text, but in here, this text tab allows us to include the images, tables, everything. It's just like, you can think of it like kind of like having a part of MS Word inside it, right? So you can type your code and some description again, some code, some description, like that. You will probably see a cursor blink in here. So this is the place where we will be writing the code and executing it, right? So now we are ready to write our first code. I hope everyone is at this interface now. Anyone still not able to come to the Google Colab? If anyone is having trouble, please either say verbally or put it into the chat so I can help you, because now we are about to start writing the code. So you need to be in this particular interface. හැමෝම මෙතනට ආවද? කවුරුත් හිර වෙච්ච අය ඉන්නවද? මෙතනට එච්චර අමාරුවක් නැහැ නේ. Google එකේ search කළා click කළා වගේ වැඩක් නෙවෙයි, right? So this is not hard, right? Hope everyone is here. So we will write our first code. Very easy one. We will write print, and within double quotes, hello world. What it basically says is print this line onto the screen. So I'm not using a physical printer. Print usually means print to the screen or to the command line or something. Here what it needs to print is this hello world thing, right? So we wrote it, but nothing happened. For something to happen, either you have to click this one, or you have to go to runtime and select run all or run this block. By the way, this is known as a cell, right? So if you click it, this cell will run. If you click run all the cells will run. Now, at the moment, you have only one cell. So running this cell and running all the cells mean the same thing. But if you have, let's say 3 or 4 cells, you can decide either to run a single one or all of them. Or you can use a keyboard shortcut, Control Enter. So when you say Control plus Enter, you should see this one. Hello world. Right. Were you able to get it? Any questions? Amila, what about you? Were you managed to do it? Karagattad?
Yes, sir.
Other people? This is Buddhika, right? Not Buddhika, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You write it with a single A.
Yes.
Okay. Have you finished this?
I'm running it, sir. Still, I haven't got it.
Sir, excuse me. I think it takes some time to come. That thing around the play button, it sort of rotates, and after a while, it comes.
Yes. When you press it, there will be some kind of animation. After that, it should come. If you made any mistakes, you will get an error. For example, something like this. It will show you an error, right? If you get an error, don't worry, we can correct it. Just let me know what the error is. Usually, by reading this error message, you can figure out what is happening. Now, this one says syntax error. That means syntax is like the grammar in English, right? When you are giving instruction, there's a proper format. That's the syntax. So if you didn't give it in the proper format, you will face certain errors. So the syntax error means you are not following the proper way to write it. So what does it say? End of line. EOL means end of line, while scanning the string literal. So he's complaining. He's looking at a string, but unfortunately, before the string ends, the line has end. So we need to have something like this. Then it will work. Right. Okay. I hope you are there. We need to move a little bit fast. Right, next one. So if any of you got any errors or stuck at place, please let me know. Comments. So what are comments? Comments are the things you put in, along with the coding. In other languages, you don't have this text block, right? Here you can have text block and put something like here. Let's say this is my first program. We can even highlight it. Right. So in this one, you can actually put text and let's move it up here like this. But in other places, in other languages, mostly you can't have any text blocks inside it. You are writing everything inside it. So in that place, if you want to add some description, you use a comment. You can say this line prints hello world. So comments are ignored, neglected by the compiler or the interpreter. It doesn't care about comment, it just bypass it. So comments are only for humans. So they have different purposes. They can either help you remember things what you have done earlier. It's common after a few months you forget what each line is doing, right? So you can make it remember, or in certain cases you might be working for a company. So someone new come to your project, he needs to know what's happening. So you can include quotes there, comments there, right? And sometimes you put copyrights and everything like that. So comments are very important. And when you are writing your answers for exam or somewhere, also put comments. If you say variable x and y and z, I may have no idea what x, y, z and things are there. So then you can put a comment and say, okay, x is this one, y is this one, and z is this one. Now, obviously, x, y, and z are not very good variable names. Even with a good variable name, sometimes you need to explain things. Why you are adding this, why you are deleting this, what are you checking in here? So put the comments. That's very important. Most languages have multi-line comments, but Python doesn't. So if you want to comment something, you have to put comment for each and every line. You can't just say from here to here it's a comment. You have to put it one by one. Okay, and comments doesn't have to be always in a separate line. You can even put a comment after the line, something like this. Again, perfectly valid, but you can't put the comment in front. If you put it in front, everything becomes a comment, right? So either comment should be at the separate line or at the end, right? So after putting the comment, you can run it. You still get the same scenario, right? So what does this print function do? It basically print something. Now here it's a string. So putting a string just print something, print the string, but it doesn't always has to be a string. You can print things like variables, numbers, and all these things. So let's try to print a number. You can say print 10 and it will print 10. And it also supports something known as escape characters. Now, have you heard the word escape characters? What is an escape character? Let's ask someone, let's toss a coin. Hiruni, have you heard the word escape characters?
No, sir, I haven't.
Anyone had heard the word escape characters? Okay, escape characters are important when you want to do something, but that's not printable. What do you mean by that? That means, let's say you are typing something, you want to go to a new line. For that, you have a character known as a new line character. Usually new line or new line and character character, or maybe a tab. But those are not visible, right? New line is not visible. It's just a formatting scenario. So certain things can be included inside this string like that. For example, we can say so if I use this one, it will just print it in the same scenario. But if I use escape character, now if I use \n, now that represents a new line. So now when I run this one, you can see it automatically breaks the line at the place of this one. This doesn't get printed as \n. It just creates an enter line, enter character. So it printed in a new line. It's actually a new line character, right? So things like this is known as escape characters. For a tab, we can use a T. You can see now the space is different. So sometimes you want to do this. If you want to have a little bit of formatting, maybe a new line somewhere in the middle or things like that, you can use escape character. Right, now I want you to try the last two examples. These two. Print 8 asterisk 10, print 8 asterisk hello. Right, type it, run it, and let me know what you get. You know this is the asterisk sign, right? Usually this is used for multiplication. And when you finished, either put it in the chat or let me know verbally so we can move. You can do both lines in the same cell, or if you want, you can do it in two separate cells, no problem. Okay, somebody has finished. Good. Somebody is good. Everyone is following. So you can see, although it's the same command, multiplication, it do two different things. First time it multiplies 10 by 8, which is 80, which is correct. And the next time it just repeat the same thing 8 times. That is because the 10 and hello, these are represented as two different data types. Right? So that's the one that we are coming to the next one. Next topic, data types. So numbers are represented either as integers or floats. In other languages, you might have things like doubles, shorts, unsigned integers, things like that. But visually, you can get away with just the floats and ints. Right? Those are known as numbers. And things that are written in letters are called strings. A single letter is known as a character. Collection of characters is known as a string. So hello is a string, 10 is a number, or in this case, it will be an integer, right? So when you are applying operations based on the data type, outcome can be different. So if you want to add two numbers, it will give a certain result. If you want to add two strings, it will give a different result. If you add two lists, which will come a little bit later, it might give you a different list, or let's say sets. It will give you a different results. So we need to know what these data types and what they are. Right. Before going to data types, let's start with variables. So variables is a way to make the life easy for a programmer, right? Let's say I want to do some calculations. Right? So if it's a very long calculation, let's say I want to calculate profit. So I can say, okay, this is my buying price is 100 and selling price is 80. So my profit should be something like this. Sorry, it not be profit, it should be print. I was thinking something, typing something else and telling you something else. Right? This one, let's clear this one out. We don't need hello, hello. So we can do something like this. Okay. Selling price, buying price, this would be profit, but it doesn't look very clear. Also, if you want to change something along the way, let's say tax calculation need your selling price. Every time my selling price change, I have to change it in multiple places. So to prevent it, I can do something called a variable. I can say something like buying price is 80. Selling price is 100. And profit is calculated by selling price subtract by let's print the profit. So at the first glance, it looks like we had made it a little bit more complicated because number of lines are higher, but it's easy to read because you know now what where the buying price, selling price and everything. And if I want to change something, let's say 110, I just need to change it in one place and everything after that will automatically change. Right? I don't have to find where these things are. So using variables is very useful. It's something so common in programming languages, right? For example, I might have something like So if I change this here, I don't have to change anywhere else. Everything automatically changes. So variables are very important. However, there are certain conditions when you are using variables. Right? So variables are places in memory. They make it easy to read, easy to update, and very compact code. So use variables and use proper variable names. So one thing about variable name is use something sensible name. Don't use things like X, Y, and Z. So no one can understand. Maybe yourself you will get upset. But there are some syntax rules as well. In Python, variable names are case sensitive. So capital A and simple A are considered as two different variables, right? So it's better to have a single format throughout your program. So practice something. Either everything is simple or either everything is capital or something like that. That way you won't get any problems. You cannot have spaces and you cannot start with a number or a symbol or anything. You must start with a letter or a underscore. You can only have alphanumeric characters in your variable names, right? So you can't have things like at, hash. Those are not allowed. Only numbers and characters. And there are certain things known as keywords, right? For example, print is a function and it's also considered a keyword. So you can't use word print as a variable name. So keywords you cannot use, right? So those are some generic rules about putting variables. So the main thing you have to remember is don't put spaces, start with a letter, and they are case sensitive. Those are the three most common things that you will forget, right? So make sure you follow them. In Python, certain differences are there. In other languages, not all the languages, but most of the languages require something known as variable declaration. What does it mean? That means before you do anything, you must tell the program what type of variable you are using. Let's say X. Then before using the variable X, you must say what the variable X data type is. Is it a number? Is it a string? Is it a character? Is it an array? What is X? Only after that, it will allow you to manipulate, add variable, add, change, edit, or whatever you have to do. In Python and MATLAB and certain other languages, this is not required. So what's happening is, when you are running the program, it will look at the data you assign to it and decide what type this variable must be. So if you say X assign 10, then it will decide, okay, it must be an integer. If you say X assign something like, let's say, a name, then it will think it's a string, right? So it has both good and bad. In one sense, it's easy to code, but on the other hand, it can give you some errors, unexpected kind of errors, and also it also make running the program quite slow. But that's the way it is. Okay. By the way, this particular syntax is known as the assignation mark. No, okay, not the equal sign, assignation mark. So what it means is take the right hand side, assign it to the left hand side, right? So that's why we can write something like this. If this is the equal sign, you will notice this is completely wrong statement. X cannot be equal to X equal 10, right? So this is the assignation mark. So don't get it wrong, right? So if you assign something like this, X will become an integer or a float. If you assign something like this, it will turn into a string because this is considered as a string, and so forth like that, right? So how do you know the type of the variable that you have been assigned? So let's say I'm trying to do this one, X assign 10. I run it, okay. If I want to get the type of the variable, I can use something like this, print type X. Okay, so this is an integer. So X is an integer. If I put something like this, now can this hold the variable? Can this number be held as integer? What do you think?
It will be a float, right? Float number.
Yeah, because this is not an integer. You can't have a fractional part in the integer. It become a float. If I do this, what's going to happen? What will be the type?
It will be a string identified as a string.
It will be a string, right? Because you have double quotes. It will be something similar to write as orange, right? And the important thing is sometimes within the code, this can change. You can see the same variable, but now I assign a new value for this and the change state and the data type change. This is the result of the first print. It's a string, then it changed into a integer. Right? In languages that the declaration is required, this is not like that. You have to specially say you are having this variable under this kind of data type. So this one is slightly different. And if you want, you can forcefully change the data type. Right? This is known as the casting. If you do something like this, it's an integer. But let's say I want to convert it to a different data type. Then what you can do is you can do something called the casting. Then it will become a string. This is different to put in double quotes because inside here you can have variables as well. You can say something like this. It will still be a string. And if you type, right, so this is known as the casting. Right. So how do we assign values for the variables? Now you know what a variable is. You know that it doesn't need declaration in Python. You can assign values like this, very easy. And if you want, you can assign multiple values at the same time. Something like this is also possible. Right? So you can have multiple variables assigned at the same time. Now this is usually not found in other languages, but in Python this is possible. Okay. So these are things that I mentioned. No declaration, data type can change during the reassignation. You can check the data type using the type button. You can do a casting and you can assign multiple variables. Right. Now again a little bit of exercise, otherwise you will fall asleep. I need you to write a program for the following scenario. Right? You have a circle. Other than okay, there's a circle. Its radius is given as 3 centimeters. I want you to write a program to calculate its area. So when you're doing the first 2 bullet points, you can do it as simple as possible. But after that, I need you to change it little by little. Right? After that, I want you to change this. Instead of using this 3 centimeter or the value 3 directly, I want you to declare it as a variable. Sorry, not declare. I want to assign it to a variable called R. And use the R instead of the value 3. Right? So at the beginning, you assign the value 3 to the R. So further down the calculation, you can only use the R, not the value 3. And about importing the library, I will explain a little bit later. For the time being, you can say 3.14 for the pi. Right? Can you write this program and quickly share it in the chat or maybe in the link or something? And when you finish, put it in the chat so I can quickly check it. Not the answer. I actually need the program. Okay. Okay, Lakman. That's good. That means you have finished it. But in programming, I usually like to see what the program is. Okay, good. Now I want to move to the next step. Assign a variable and do the calculation through the variable. And for the others, if you want to use the exponent, you can use this particular sign, 2 asterisk signs. Most languages use the hat mark to write the exponent, but Python always try to be different. So sometimes it's a problem because hat sign has a different meaning in the Python. So you have to use double asterisks. Okay, Sandali, your one is okay, correct? And Sachin, you also shared me something. Sachin, when you are sharing, give permission. I think there is an option to give permission because at the moment I am getting access denied kind of scenario, right? When you are sharing, I think there's an option. Let me check it where it is. Under the get link, you have an option, anyone with the link. Anyone with the link. So with that option, you can allow me to view it. Otherwise, you have to add my name to the editing list. Only then I will be able to view it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. Oh, someone put the hat. Nivant, did you get the answer? Nivanta?
So I got it as 3.14. I guess that's wrong.
Yes, try something like 3 into the power 2 first in some separate cell, and then you will notice the problem.
Okay, sir.
Because you can't use the hat. Good, everyone is doing. So let's try something. So we have the radius. Okay, we'll see it as radius. Then we can say A 3.14. So in a way it works, but you will notice I have to type 3.14 as the area. In fact, you have built-in value for the pi. But if you try to put the pi in here, so let me put another code block and try to call it as like this. You will notice it will give an error. The reason is the value of pi is coded inside another library. So we have to learn how to get the library. So at first you have to get the library import math. That will be the math library. After that, if I call something like math.py, let's print the value and see. You will notice now we get the value, right? So this is how the it works. So when you're writing the program, put all the imports at the top. So that's the general rule. Otherwise, that means before importing any library, you can't use it. So it's a general rule is to put the importing at the top. So for the time being, let's remove this one. I don't need this one. We'll take this as my scenario. Instead of this, I can say math by now we can run it and you get the answer, right? So something new you learn how to import a library. Here's another program for you to try. Modify your program to get the radius from the user. How do you get a value from the user? So here's some syntax hint provided. Use this particular syntax to get a value from the user. And another hint, if you get an error, check the variable types. Okay, right. Give it a try and let me know your code and what you get as the answer. By the way, if any of you are still stuck at that first part, don't worry, put it in the chat. I will help you.
So excuse me. Hello.
Anyone finished? කවුරුවත් ඉවර කළාද?
So, this gives an error message saying that you can't multiply a string. So do we need to convert it to float format?
Yes, you need. You can't multiply string by a number. And
So,
how do you convert it?
so do you mind recalling that how to dress that?
Like this.
Okay, so thank you.
So this is for converting it to string. If you want to convert it to different format, instead of str, you have to use that data type like float or int or whatever. Data type you want to convert it to, then whatever the variable or number or value or something, and your result will be that value in this new data type. Okay. Okay, Isha, thank you. Your answer is correct. Very good. And Nivant are into float. By the way, I just noted something, Isha. You are converting it to an INT. Why are you converting into INT? Okay, people are getting it done.
I want to convert it to integer.
Does the radius always has to be an integer? Can I have something like 3.5 centimeters? You're almost there, but you miss something. Radius doesn't always has to be an integer. What would be a better one? Okay, that's okay. I think everyone has, others have already got the answer. It's better to convert into a float. Reason is you might have some fractional values, right? You cannot always guarantee that the radius will be a whole number. So better to convert into a float. What you basically need is a number, and it's better to have it in the most generic form. So instead of 3, you can have something like input, enter the radius. But if you try to run it, as most of you have noted, you will get an error. The thing is, this R is actually a string, because this input command get anything and everything as strings. So you can't multiply a string by pi. So what you have to do is you have to convert into a float. So we can say R is equal to float R. As some of you have done, now you can do it in a single line, no problem. But if you put something like int here, this 10.5 value will not be correctly calculated. Right, good. Everyone has done it. Let's move to the next one. Functions. Okay, this is another important one. Now we learned about variables. Variables are important. So they reduce the redundancy. If you have to use the same value again and again, you don't have to type it everywhere. You just type the variable name. And if you want to make any changes, you just change that variable. It's not only the data that gets duplicated. Sometimes the instructions can also get duplicated. There can be several places you always want to calculate the second maximum value or something like that. Then rather than duplicating and copy pasting the same code, you can do something called a function. So if you have the same thing happening at multiple places, better to write it as a function and call that function. So when you call that function, that set of steps will be called there and will be run. So it will make your code easy to modify, compact, and also more fast, right? How do you write a function, right? So that's the next thing. To write a function, you use the keyword def, that is for the defining, right? So let me show you how to write a function. Define, then you get a function name. After that, you put parentheses and put a colon. That is important. After that, enter it. And this is one weird thing about Python. It uses indentation to show the hierarchy, right? It uses indentation to show the levels, how depth you are in the coding. In C++ or C or any most of the languages, you instead of this, you use something like this. And if you would want to put something else, you again put some parentheses and do like this. But here, the developers decided to go with an indentation, right? So make sure this tab or this indentation is there. Otherwise, your code will not run. So in Python, the formatting itself is sort of important, right? So now we are inside the function. Whatever indented will be part of that code, part of the part of this function. So we can say something like print so that is my function. If I want to call my function, then I will simply call it like this. So whenever I want to use it, I simply use it like this. What's going to happen is it goes to my function and it runs this whatever the program. So here, so remember this is actually function definition. So when the program is running, you are not starting from here. Functions are not running like this. They are separate. They will not be automatically run. They will only run if it is called. So this is a function, so this will not run when you first click this button. So what's going to happen is it will come to here. This is going to be the executed one. So this is not a function. This is a normal scenario. Up to here is the function. This is a normal statement. So this will run and here I am calling the function. So now the program goes back up and run this one. So that's what's happening. So example, if I say print test, you will notice test is printed first, then the hello world, because this is run first, then this line, and this line means this line will be replaced by this code segment. So that's where this one is going to happen. So you can think of function as replacing this function name by whatever inside it, right? If I want to, I can have it in a separate block as well, no problem. You can see it's working, right? And what will happen if I remove this indentation? You can see there's an error. So this indentation is very important. So if I indent it like this, it becomes part of the function. So if I put it like this, now what's going to happen? Both of these lines will be part of my function. So now when I run it, I go here, call my function. So what is my function? Oh, here's my function. I print this line and then I print this line. So hello world and test. So that is about function. Is it clear or is it sort of like hard to understand? You have to give me a feedback. පැහැදිලිද? තේරුණාද? තේරුණේ නැතිද?
තේරුණා sir.
Good. අනිත් යන්ට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ නේද? ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ නේ. හරි. එහෙනම් අපි ඊළඟට යමුකෝ. Right. So this is the basic syntax for a function. You start with the def function name within parentheses, and then you have a parenthesis, a semicolon. Sorry, not a semicolon, a colon. Then with you have to indent whatever belong to that function. Right. Right. That description is given here. Sometimes you want to pass values into the function. Right. So these are known as arguments. So here's an example. So I'm defining a new function to multiply two numbers. So I need to pass two numbers into the function, and I also need to get the result from the function. To pass the numbers, I am using these two. These are the input arguments, number 1 and number 2. So if I put it like this, inside this function, I can use those variable names. So if I say num1, num2, num3, num4 like that, inside my function, I can use variable names. Those num1, num2, num3, and num4 I can use. When the function is called, you have to supply numbers for these arguments, numbers or characters or whatever the values. Right? So in this case, multiply 2, 3. So when I'm calling this function, num1 will be 2, num2 will be 3. Those are the numbers coming from here. Then you do the whatever the calculation, and then you want to give the answer back. For that, you use the keyword return. So what are you going to return? This variable called answer, return answer. So when you call the function like this, 2 and 3 will be substitute for num1 and num2. They will be multiplied and answer will be returned. So answer 6 will come out from here. So when you are calling, this signature should match. Signature means function name, number of parameters, and variable type. They should match. Okay. Next part, create a function to return the area when the radius is given. Now you already have a part of it. Now I want to modify it. Right? So modify your program to include the function. So now what's going to happen is, you have this particular program which take the radius, but after that, instead of doing all this calculation in here, they need to be inside the function. So you are just calling the function name, calculate area or something like that, and then it will give the answer. So area calculation should be handled by a different function. Can you do it and put the answer? Give it a try. So how are the things coming up? Amile, what about you? You are logged in with two different devices. Okay, I don't know which one is working. Were you managed to get the coding completed?
Yeah, yes, sir. I will, sir.
What about other people? Okay, Lakmal, we have sent the answer. Define area. Okay. Your one is okay. Lakmal, can you take that keyboard input outside the function? So what I'm basically meaning is this function is okay. Let's put it like this. The purpose of this function is to calculate the area. So you input the radius and it return the area. That's the thing this function is defined to do. Right? So if you want to pass the area, you can do it. But if you want to get the area from keyboard, then you have to get it outside the function and pass the radius to the function after that, something like that. Okay, Buddhika, you have asked something. Sachini also said, so everyone had run the code, right? There are no errors, right? So if there are errors, just say there are errors, right? Don't put the copy in there. Yes.
So here, when we call the function, we are not asking to print this. So, sir, that means when we are returning means when we call the function, it automatically prints the answer.
I'm not clear about what you're asking.
In previous times, when we want to print something, we used a different code like print what we want. But here, sir, without using that print word, if we call the function, is it automatically printing the output that we return from that function?
No, if you want to print something, you have to use the print keyword. But whether that print keyword is inside the function or it can be outside the function. So depending on that place, it can happen. For example, if you put the print function in print command inside the function, whenever you ask for that function, it will also run that print command inside it as well. But if it is not there, it will not print it.
So can you please check my code? I didn't use the print word, but when I call that circle area function, it's automatically printing the answer.
You are Sachini, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Oh, this one.
Yes, sir. Is it happening because I am returning the area value and when I call the function, is it printing that or?
Yeah, I think that is the case. But usually if you want to print something, it's better to use the print command. But the thing what's happening here is, if you put something like this, you will notice it's not getting printed. Okay. Now,
Yes.
let me give you an example and show why it is happening. So if I put something like this, what do you think is going to happen? See,
Yes.
if I just put a number and press Control Enter, it evaluates it. Since it's just a number, what's going to happen is it's going to print it. Even if you put something like 3 plus 5, it will print it. But the proper way to do is use the print command. So what's happening is it's going to evaluate it, and if it's just a number or something, it's going to print it. So in your case, this thing is returning a number.
Yes.
So when this one is evaluated, it will give you some number. Right? So this will actually be replaced by some number, 25, 35, or whatever the area. So when you are running it, since it's just a number, it's going to be printed. But if you want to print something, actually, it's better to use a print command. And here what's going to happen is you just have a number, and it's sort of at a loss. Python is at a loss what to do.
Yes.
So let's say you just put 3. So now it doesn't know what to do. Does it need to print it? Does it need to assign to something? Does it need to do something else? Because this is just a fact, not some set of instructions, right? If I put something like this, now this is an instruction. It says assign 3 to the X. If you put something like that, then it will not print it because it says, okay, I'm going to assign it. That's what it says. But if you just put some fact like 3 or 5 or something like that, then it's going to be printed. So it has nothing to do with your return case. It has to do with how you had put this one. So a better way to do it is to say something. Oh, did I miss it? If you put something like a print, you will get the same result, but now it looks a little bit more professional. Because now you know, okay, here I'm going to print it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Understood.
Okay, I think everyone was able to do it. Anyone need help? Anyone need any help on anything? By the way, the import doesn't have to be inside the function. You can import it at the top of the cell. Again, it will work. Usually you put the imports at the very top, right? I noticed that in several cases. Better to put the import at the top of your program. Even when you have multiple cells, put it at the very first one. Right? Later on, we will be using multiple cells. So at that time, it should be at the topmost cell. Even inside it, it will work, but that's the usual place.
So excuse me.
Yes.
Can we combine the function with a sentence as well for clarity? Say like in this case, can I say the area of the circle is, and then call the function after that, like that?
You mean you have to print it or in the answer or before it?
No, I want to say the area of the circle, the sentence, like it's like a what?
Right. It's like a complete sentence, not like just. You can do it. Let's just type it. You can do something like this. And here, even here, if you put a new line, enter the radius 10.5, area of the circle is, then it gives you the value. You can add this and put a comma and put this value.
So here we are just incorporating area. My question is, can we do it for the area calc as in your example?
You mean your returning value is not a number, you want to return a full string.
No. So if you have print area of the circle is then comma. After that, instead of typing area, can I call the function area calc? Suppose if you have the area inside that function as well.
Yeah, you can. So this is not actually my code. I'm just testing some of your students' code. So hopefully this is a working one. Area calc R. This should work.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. Next, let's move to the next topic. List, tuple, sets, and dictionaries. Okay. What are they? So far, we have been working with variables that stored a single value. So X can be a single number, Y can be a single number, fruit can be a single string, something like this. But sometimes you need to store multiple values in a single variable. Other languages, usually things like C++, Java, things like that, call them as arrays. MATLAB call them as matrices. In Python, instead of arrays or matrices, we have these 4 types: list, tuple, sets, and dictionaries. So what are they and how they are different? So these 4 types allow you to store multiple things in the same variable name. In this example, I am storing 3 items in the same variable, fruit list. So this is actually a tuple. Not tuple, sorry. This is a list. So you can see how it is created. You put the list name just like when you're creating a normal variable. Put assignation mark, but after that, instead of giving a string or a number or something like that, you put square brackets. Now in programming languages, brackets, braces, curly brackets, parentheses, or these have their own roles, right? So when you say square bracket, it should be square brackets. You can't put parentheses. You can't put curly braces, right? Like that. So for this one, you need to put square brackets. Then you start. Then you have 2 square brackets. Inside it, you can put your collection. Right. In this case, we have 3 items. All of them are string type objects, strings. Right. So lists and tuples are basically the same thing. The main difference is tuples are read only. So once you created it, you can't change it. Certain cases it can help you, right? Because tuples are a little bit fast and take less memory. Let's say you want in your program you have a calendar and you want to have the 7 days of the week. Now we know the name of the days will not change. It's a fixed thing, right? So instead of a list, you can have a tuple. So it's read only. Other than that, list and tuples are almost the same. And tuples are list are ordered. That means the items are in a particular order. If you change the item, they will be different. And they don't get randomly shuffled. In the fruit list, first one will always be the apple, second one will always be the banana. Right? So they are not changing. The order is important. Sets, on the other hand, are unordered. They don't have any order. That's one main difference. Dictionaries, on the other hand, use a completely different mechanism. They use something known as the key value pairs. So you have a key and you have a value. So this is how you can, this is another way you can create a list or a tuple. So here you saw one method of creating a list, right? You just start by assigning the items. But if you want to have something like a tuple, you can say tuple, parenthesis, and assign it to here. And then you can fill the values. That's again possible. So we will go a little bit deep into list. Before going to the depth, let's look at the other 2 types in short. So sets are unordered and unindexed. Index means since the place is important, the place is called an index. So the first item in the list is called a 0th indexed. So the place 0, 1, 2, 3 like that place is known as the index, right? But for the set, you don't have a index because there's no particular order. It can be mixed. And duplicate values are ignored. In list, you can have duplicate values. But in a set, if you have duplicate values, only one value will be counted. Right? And in a dictionary, you must have unique keys. You can't have duplicate keys. Values can be duplicated, but not the keys. So those are the several important things. Sets are unordered and unindexed. Duplicate values will be ignored. And it can also contain different data types. Right? You can see it's created with curly braces. In this set, you have a string, numbers, a Boolean value, and all that thing. Right? So in a set, you can have multiple data types. So what is the use of a set? Sets allow you to work with set operations. Right? In maths, you have things like union, intersection, join, disjoin, and things like that. So if you have your items in a set, you can apply those operations, right? Just like you learn in your learning Venn diagrams, those things can be done here. Now here's an example of a dictionary. Later versions have ordered ones. Earlier versions didn't have ordered dictionary. So the keys cannot be duplicated. So here's an example. In this dictionary, I'm saying different things. So for each attribute, you have a value. So in here, you have the brand and the value is 4. The key is electric, value is false. The key here is year, value is 1964, like that. Okay? So if you want to get some value, you have to refer it by the key. So sets and dictionaries, we are not going to use, but list we are going to use extensively. So let's look at the list in further details. So you can think of list as similar to arrays in other languages. They are changeable, so that means they can be updated. They allow duplicate values, no problem. They are ordered and it's 0 based indexed. Certain languages have 1 based index, right? Certain languages have 1 based index. That means the first element is counted as 1. So if you want to get the first element, you have to say array and either square brackets or parentheses or something and 1. Certain languages have 0 based index. So the first item is actually labeled or indexed as 0. So if you go by the number, the maximum index will be 1 less than the total number of items because you are starting with 0. So in Python, it's a 0 based one. First item is 0. Okay. So here's an example. My list, apple, banana, cherry. You can actually refer to 0th item. Not the 0th item, 0th index, which will give you the apple, right? And if you want to get a length, this will work for set and tuple and list. You can say print length, len, okay, not the full word, and give the name of the list. Okay, so that is about the list. So let's try to create a list like this and print the first item in the list. Can you give a try? Create this list and print the first item in the list. Finished? Put your hands up or maybe give a thumbs up, put something in the chat or whatever you like. Now we are going to work with the rest of the functions in the list. Good. Anyone has finished? Others? Satini, what about you? Satini, Sandali, Lakni. All the names look similar, ending with ni. We also have Hiruni. Okay. Lot of ni people are here. Okay, I hope you have done that one. It's not hard. You just create a list. So this is how you create a list. And this is how you get an item. Now I want to print the item. So use it as a print. And also I can get the size. So if I want to get the size, I can say print and then get the length of my list. This can be important if you have to do some calculation or iteration based on the length. You can use this one. So in that case, instead of printing, you might assign it to some variable and use that one, or something like that. Okay, I believe everyone had finished it by now. So there are some functions, operations you can do on lists. So let's look at them. Here's some set of them. We have 2 slides. So if I want to change an item in the list, this is how we are going to do it. Just like calling that item, but instead of just calling or printing it, I am just assigning a value. So this black currant will be assigned into this list. So which value will be replaced? Can someone guess? Which value will be gone and replaced by the black currant?
Second value.
I want the name.
Banana.
Banana. Okay. Others? Buddhika, what do you think? Which value will be replaced?
Banana.
Banana. Let's ask someone. Hiruni, what about you? Apple, banana, or cherry?
Second value, banana.
Second value, banana. Okay, good, good. Right, that is correct. Now remember, we are starting with 0th index, right? So it is not going to be the first value. Although we say 1, it will be the banana that is going to be replaced. Very good. So if you want to replace more than 1, you can give a range like this. But here there's a small thing you have to remember. Although we say 1:3, the third one, okay, let's try it and see. Then you get a better understanding. Create this list and don't run this one because this one will always going to replace that one. Run this one and we'll see what's going to happen. And by the way, you can print the whole list by saying print and give the list name. It will print the whole list. Did you get the result? You will notice this first index item is going to be replaced, but the third one is not going to be replaced. In fact, there is no third place here to get it replaced. It's more or less like from 2, from 1 up to 3, not including the 3. That's how it's going to replace the item. So the upper bound is not going to be replaced. And there are some other functions that we can utilize. If we want to insert an item, we can use the insert function. There are many ways to do it. So this is just one way to do it. You can use the insert function. You can also concatenate list. Either you can use the extend keyword, or you can just put an addition, add mark, and put the two lists, and then again that will add the list. So those are different ways you can use lists. If you want to remove something, again there are different ways. If you know the value to remove, you can say list name dot remove, then give the value. So the value will be removed. If you want to remove some item, and if you know the place or the index of that item, then you can give the del followed by the list name and the index. That is again possible, right? If you want to remove everything, then you can say the clear command. So it will not delete the list. It will just clear all the items in the list. So list will be there, but it will be empty. Okay. Any questions?
Excuse me, sir. Can you skip the previous slide, please?
Is it okay? By the way, I will upload it into the LMS as well. So don't worry, you will have this slide and the video. Right. Now I want to do a small exercise. Again, this one. Right. Now, how many of you had done programming in any other language? Anyone had done programming in some other languages other than Python?
So I have used R for the final year research.
I have used the R. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone with more conventional type of programming? R is not bad, but I'm thinking more of like C, Java, that type of thing.
I have done C. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, I have done C and Java, but can't remember now.
Right. Anyway, so try this example. I hope you can see it. Same list, apple, banana, cherry. So I have put the name of the original list as original. So this is one list. And I am kind of doing this assignation. And then I'm changing some value in the original. Then I'm printing this one. So do it and let me know your thoughts. What's happening in here?
So will it return the initial values?
Sorry, I didn't quite get what you mean.
It'll return the initial values because the original list was assigned to list 1, and after that only the change happened. So I think it will return the initial one.
Initial means what are the fruits you are going to get?
Apple, banana, cherry.
Okay. Have you wrote the code?
No, I just looked.
Okay, then write the code and let me know what's going to happen.
Then this banana is going to be replaced by the word coconut.
In your list 1?
Yeah.
Did you write it?
Yes.
Did you
Sir.
wrote the code?
Yes. Sir.
For this one, you actually have to write the code and only then you get the idea, because this one, this is not what usually we expect from a normal programming point of view. This one is slightly different. So that's why I want you to write your code and get it from your first-hand experience. Otherwise, you might make this mistake when you're doing the coding.
So it is printing coconut.
It is printing coconut. Okay.
Yeah.
So think of it like this. Okay. So what will happen in this case? I am assigning 10 to the x. Fine. I am then doing an assignation like this. So what will be the value of y now? So after this line, what will be the value of y? Sorry, line is not clear.
Y should be 10.
Y should be 10. Now let's change x to something else. X is changed into 5. So let's print both x and y. What should be the answers? What should be the x? What should be the y?
Y should be still 10. It should be 5.
Okay, good. That's what we expect. Now we have the same scenario. Instead of numbers, we have a list. We have this one, our original list. Then we are assigning it to something else. This one, let's call it as original. We'll keep it as original LST. It's a list. Right. And then I am updating this one. I'm replacing this banana with a coconut. I'm not touching this one. Okay. Now I'm going to print both the original list and the this first list. What do you think should happen? I have not touched on this one. So I don't think that's what you expect, right? Because it's quite similar to this second example, but here I changed it to x into 5 and didn't touch the y, so y remained the way we originally assigned it. X is 5, y is 10. Here I changed the original one, didn't touch this list one, but somehow this one also got replaced. Do you see the difference? So the thing is, when it comes to lists, you can't do this. You can do it, but this doesn't mean you are assigning a new list. This doesn't mean you are creating a new list for this one and copying everything here. These are not two independent lists. These are not two independent lists. It is basically keeping the same list and having two names for the same list. We call it as referencing. So somewhere in the memory, you have this list. This variable points to this list, and this variable is also pointing to the same list, not two copies. So if I change this one, this value is still pointing to that changed one. So it's going to print something different. This one also going to print the new different one. So when you are doing it, this is not actually copying or creating a new list. You are basically creating a new reference to the same list. So you change something here, either using this variable name or with this variable name, other value is also going to be automatically affected. Okay. So this is not something common in, not common, it's actually very rare to find. This is the only language that I know do something like this. All other things, other languages usually do it with follow the common sense, right? In all the other languages, only the original list will have the coconut. The list one will still have the banana, but here everything is nuts, right? So you need to keep it in mind, because when you are doing the programming, you might be asked to do some list manipulation. So keep it in mind. This is not new list or a copy of a list. This is just a reference to the same list. Clear? Okay. So next, yes.
So in that case, how can we make a copy of the original list? Is there a method to do that?
Yeah, that's the next slide is about. So this is known as the referencing situation, right? Address by reference. So to do it, you have a keyword called copy. So again, there are two types of copies. Although some people say Python is easy, sometimes it makes it a complete headache. Okay. So copy, you have the shallow copy and the deep copy. Shallow copy means you are copying only the first level. Deep copy means you are copying all the levels. So don't worry, think about what this level scenario means. For it will be easy to use the deep copy. We are not following the performance issues. So as long as you use a deep copy, everything will be copied item wise. Okay. So this is how you are going to create a copy. To make a copy, you have to import the copy. Other than that, this line is the same. Now to create a copy, you say copy dot deep copy original and list 2. That's it. You don't just assign it, you use the deep copy function. There's another way you can use slicing, but I thought, okay, we'll go with the copy. There's something called slicing. So you end up with, so try this example. Okay, now try this one and see what you are going to get.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So the previous thing that you told by assigning to a new list will not create a new list. Like that way, the same thing will happen for tuple sets and dictionaries also.
Yeah, tuples is basically the same scenario. For the normal variables, it's not going to happen like X, Y, and Z. But for list and others, it's going to happen.
Okay, so thank you.
What happened? Now it should work.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have a question.
Hmm.
First we use the import copy.
Hmm.
Then along with copy, we use copy dot deep copy.
Yeah.
So whenever we use the word deep copy, that means we have to first import copy function, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's another way you can use it. We'll show it first with the deep copy. So you can see now the first one is coconut, second one is banana. There's another way you can do it. It might be easier because you don't have to import anything. It's using a slice. So slice means sometimes you want to select part of the list, right? If you remember, if we do something like this, so let me add just a quick code. We have double L. Let's copy it. So we have 3 variables, but if I do something like this, you can see I'm selecting certain items. If I just put the colon, that basically means I am selecting everything. So the second method says select everything and assign it to list one. So I'm not assigning one list into assigning to another list. I am basically selecting everything and assigning it. So if you use this method, again, it will work. So this might be easier since it doesn't need to import anything. We just put this particular size and it will work, right? So the fact is, even if you don't put it, you might feel like it's copying. Sometimes you can get into that problem, but somewhere in the middle of the code, you will certainly notice that things are not as you expected, right? So those things can happen, right? So this is how you can make a copy. Right. Now we have about only 15 or 20 minutes, so we'll try to move a little bit fast. Branching. So far, the code we had written had been working in sequential order. We start from the top and gradually move down. But sometimes you have to make decisions. Certain syntaxes or statements should not be executed or should be executed only under certain conditions. So that is where this branching comes in. We will look at only one type of branching using the if condition. So this is the basic syntax of an if condition, right? So it is very easy to remember, just like the normal any other programming language. Only difference is, again, you have the indentation at here, right? You don't have curly bracket or anything here. Instead, you have that indentation and you have a colon here. So as long as you remember that one, you can go ahead and do it. Shall we quickly do this one? So I'm typing that code. You can also type. Finished? So when you run it, it should print something like this. It check this condition, and if the condition is true, it will print this line. If the condition is not true, the statement will not work and it will not print anything. But remember, once you put a if sign, you must put something after it. You must put some statement, right? You can't bypass it saying if I don't have anything to do here. If you don't have anything to do under the if condition, you have to put at least the word pass. So there can be other comparators or logical conditions, not only the greater than sign. Here I have mentioned them. You can check whether they are equal. Now remember, you have to have two equal signs. If you just use one, it will be considered as an assignation. Equal, not equal, less than, greater than, less than or equal, greater than or equal. So these are very common things. So after the if, you can extend the condition further. You can have a if and a else. So in that case, you have only two different options. Either this if part happens or the else part happens. But sometimes you can break it, you want to break it into multiple steps. Okay? For example, in here, the first part is similar to what we have just done. If b is greater than a, do this one. But what happens if it is not? If it is not, it will move to the second one. So this is a short notation, something similar to else if. So rather than saying else if, we say that elif, E-L-I-F. So if this is not the case, then check for the next condition. So what is the next condition? A is equal to B. Okay, if that's the case, you do it. you can have more than one if conditions, right? And what will happen if nothing match with any of these conditions? In that case, you can put a else. In that case, you can put a else. So these two are optional. So after the if, you have something to do if the condition works, and you can have a else. If you want, in the middle, you can have optional else if statements as well. Okay. And sometimes you want to check more than one condition, right? You want to check more than one condition. Then we use what is known as a logical operands. You can have AND logical operator and OR logical operator. AND operator, OR operator. AND operator means both of these conditions need to be true. Only then the if condition is satisfied and this one is executed. If you put an O logical operand, it only need to satisfy one of them. At least one of them needs to be satisfied. Then the condition will be satisfied. If condition will be satisfied and the statement will be executed. Right. Next we have the nested conditions. What is a nested condition? Sometimes you can have more than one if condition inside another if condition. So here what's going to happen is you are going to check first this one. X is larger than 10. Then do this one. After that, you are going to check this one and do it. Otherwise, do this one. But look at the indentation. By the indentation, you should be able to see which ones are in the same level. So if I had indented this one to this side, these will be two independent if conditions. First, I will check this if one, and regardless of the result, I will check this one. But in this scenario, the second if is actually indented further into the right. So this one is inside this first if condition. So depending on the result, this may execute or this may not execute, right? So they are dependent. So this second if is actually inside the first if, right? So that is the nested condition. I like to give you one more exercise, but let me simplify it a little bit further. Otherwise, it might take a little bit longer. I'm going to change it to fail grade, and 20 to 60 is a B. And anything above 60 is an A. I'm going to delete these two lines. Right. Can you quickly write a program for this one? You have to ask the user to enter marks. If marks is less than 20, you have to print fail. If it is equal to 20, equal or greater than 20, but less than 60, it should print as B. If it is equal or above 60, it should print as A. Can you quickly do it? By the way, do you have another lecture after this one?
At 5 o'clock, we have another one.
5 o'clock. Okay. Then at most I can take only 5 minutes. Okay, fine, don't worry. When you finish, put it into the chat. When you put else if, you don't have to put another if. Okay, okay. Nivant had done something a little bit different than I originally thought. Let me check. Okay, most of you have done it, but I have a feeling you could have done it a little bit shorter, because it seems like most of the time people are checking two conditions, right? Especially for the second one, the grade B, whether it's between 20 and 60. But when you come in through the if condition, it's already filtered. Okay, so it's not wrong, you can do it, no problem, it will work. I'm just looking at if anyone managed to do it with a single if or else if without having nested one. Okay, who's this? Sachin. Sachin had used only one. What about that one? Okay, Sachin's one is quite compact, so that's the way actually I had also wrote the code. Because you don't need to have two conditions for this one. So here you are getting the marks converted into integers. Then you are checking whether it is larger than or equal to 60. If so, you print A. That's understandable. If not means, now by coming to this place, we know it's not greater than 60. So it should be less than 60. Right? We first check it here. If it is larger than 60, it's a. If not, and if it is larger than 20. So I don't have to check again whether it is less than 60. Because if it is higher than 60, it would have done it at here. So definitely marks are less than 60. So I need to only check whether it is larger than 20. If that's the case, you print B. And if I'm coming up to this point, that means it is not larger than 60, it is not larger than 20. So that means it should be less than 20. So I can directly print F. Right? So that's how I wrote it, but you can write it in other ways as well. No problem, it will work. So it's 4:35. I don't want to keep you waiting because we have another lecture. Here are the things that we will be left with to do. We have to work with random numbers, random shuffle, and then we have the loop structures. So probably we will cover it on the next day. So the first part we'll spend on this one, and then we'll work into the neural networks. I will upload a PowerPoint for that one as well. For this one, I did not upload a PowerPoint because it doesn't seem necessary at the moment. For the next one, I will upload a PowerPoint as well. So we'll start with the neural networks. It will be a 2-day session, a little bit large one. So if we quickly recap, we learn what's Python, how to write a code, how to use Google Colab, comments, what are the different data types, what are the conditions of variables, how do you convert variables, and we did a little bit of maths, how to get keyboard inputs, functions, lists, how to create list, remove list, and what are the differences between list, tuples, and sets, and dictionary, and some functions with the list like creating, changing, removing, things like that. We learn about how you can copy a list properly, and we learn about if condition, logical conditions, and logical operators. So we read a little bit of numbers as exercise as well. Is there anything you want to ask at the moment about today's lecture or any upcoming lectures?
So what is the procedure for the evaluation?
Exam.
Continuous evaluation.
Most likely give you a take-home assignment because maybe one or two small assignments, small questions during the class, but not very large one, maybe 10-minute or 15-minute MCQ type ones. Those will be very small. Most likely give you a take-home assignment for you to do it. And the final exam, if the things didn't turn out well, we will have to do online.
Okay, sir.
Anything else? Okay, if we don't have anything else, I will wind up for today. So we will meet up on next Saturday, 2 p.m. Okay, have a nice week.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.